Bird 65 on a still in waiting Wednesday for the Eagles to return from their bye with the big one coming up against Kansas City on Monday night. Mac and Mac guys joined by Mike Gill from the Sports Bash down the shore, ESPN 97.3. All right, you're going to either need to stand up or adjust your camera, Mike Gill.
Look at that. We're going SEC.
Ole Miss.
We're going.
There's got to be a line of logic behind it. Why Ole Miss today, Mr. Gill?
So most of the T-shirts I have is a campus I've been to. I have not been to Ole Miss, but I do have a couple of. This one you see says Ole Miss baseball. I coached baseball, and I had a kid that played at Ole Miss.
There we go. Ole Miss. Okay. I thought it was A.J. Brown celebration.
No Eli Manning, no A.J. Brown. It's probably the depth of my Ole Miss alums right there. But, yep, I figure the Ole Miss, I've had this one deep away. I've lost a few pounds so I can get back into the Ole Miss.
Nice, very good. All right, and this player who improved drastically after he got out from under the thumb of Coach Mike Gill.
Exactly. Yeah, I've had some pretty high. I actually have a Vanderbilt shirt. I had a kid go to Vanderbilt, but I've been to the Vanderbilt campus twice. But I had Vanderbilt. I've had Florida State. I've had a couple pretty good. Got a couple guys who've been drafted. So yeah, Ole Miss baseball. There you go. That's this weekend. Right. You can keep the requests coming. I'll do my best.
You should have gone Vanderbilt today because we got Brad Spielberger coming up after you, and he's a Vandy guy. We could have made it an all Vandy show. But
did I see Jordan Matthews signed as a tight end somewhere?
Yeah,
he's a Vandy guy, right?
Yeah, he's a Vandy guy. Yes.
Yeah. Who the hell did he sign with? I didn't see that.
Was it Tennessee?
Let me look it up. I forget. But yeah, he's been toggling back before tight end and wide receiver for a couple of years now with the 49ers. Carolina.
Well, we know guys who have been tight ends at Carolina before, right? So just add another one to the list. I didn't even know.
I'm actually texting with that guy right now, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Yeah, Gill knows who I'm referring to. All right. Mike Gill, it's been a week and a half since the Eagles have been on a field anywhere, and they get their vacation just like everybody else. Not going to complain about it, but Nick Sirianni 3-0 lifetime coming off the bye. But truthfully, that kind of pales in comparison to Andy Reid's 28-4. He's been the best, not only now in the National Football League, I would argue the best ever, because there was a time, I know for some of you millennials might not realize it, that they didn't have this thing they call a bye. They used to just play straight through the season. So I'd say Andy's the best after-bye coach in the history of the National Football League. Advantage Chiefs, advantage Eagles, because Sirianni's undefeated. Yeah. It's only 3-0, but undefeated's undefeated. Does it have any effect on the game that both of these teams are coming off the bye on Monday night?
No, I think it just makes this game what it is, the best game of the season. I mean, you have a rematch of the two teams that were in the Super Bowl, and here they are, the best two teams record-wise again, and they both are coming off of a bye. So there is no, well, you had the bye week, Andy's great off the bye. You had the bye week, well, the Eagles are great off the bye. You have two teams that are at their best, trying to get healthy and playing right smack in the middle of the season, too. This isn't like a week 4 game. It's not a game way deep in week 15 where both teams have things kind of, figured out. This is right in the middle of the year, who they are, who they want to be. I think it's just an awesome spot for this game. The buys make it even better. The fact that I read this yesterday, there's only been 6 Monday Night Football games in history that have had two teams in week 11 with 7 wins or more playing against each other. We're talking about one of the premier primetime games ever is being played on Monday night with the Eagles and the Chiefs. And no, nobody really has the advantage here because you have the two best teams last year, the two best teams again this year playing midway with a bye. Awesome setting. I know it stinks that we have 2 Sundays in a row without football, but that's the nature of the beast when you're the best.
Yeah, and it's ironic. I mean, the Eagles lead the NFC, and the Chiefs lead the AFC. So it's like nothing's changed, but everything's changed. I think in both cities you have this sentiment, and we've talked about it all year, Mike. Style points, style points, style points. When you're that good, people expect everything, and I think the Chiefs are a lot like the Eagles, and people are saying, "What's wrong with the Chiefs?" Because they're only 7-2, because they laid an egg against the Broncos a couple weeks ago, because they didn't play that impressively in Germany against the Miami Dolphins. And now we're talking. I never thought on a team that had Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, people would be saying, well, yeah, but the strength is the defense in Kansas City.
Right.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, we look at why. It's funny. Last year in the Super Bowl, I felt the Eagles were the better roster. I just felt they had the better roster
So
than
did
the
I.
Chiefs did. And one of the reasons was, look, they don't have a guy that's an explosive outside receiver that you're really concerned that can get these big plays against you. And, I think this year probably even lesser of a roster. So they have really, tuned it up defensively, where they were, I guess, 3 years ago when they played Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl. They had a terrible offensive line. Their defense wasn't very good. They have really transformed this team and almost made it, John, we were talking about the comparisons between the Eagles and the Chiefs yesterday on my show. And Andy Reid, the architect of the Eagles in the 90s through the 2000s, really through the 2000s, late 90s. And then the Chiefs, very similar. He had Donovan McNabb and not a whole heck of a lot else. He had one weapon on offense. Westbrook was there for a little while. Similar with Kansas City here. They just have Mahomes. They don't have much on the outside. They've got Kelsey. So, yeah, I think they're kind of finding their way offensively. It's, hey, Mahomes, make a couple plays, and we'll kind of stay in this game with our defense, which is a really interesting shift for where the Chiefs were 3 years ago, which, by the way, they've been in the Super Bowl. Think about this. If they make it again this year, that would be 4 out of 5 years that they would be in the Super Bowl.
It's pretty darn impressive. And yesterday, we had Matt Verderam from Sports Illustrated on, but former Chiefs beat guy, and he stays on top of the Chiefs very well. I think you got to give the Chiefs credit when you say, yeah, their roster might not be that good. They didn't make many additions this year, but you remember last year against the Eagles in the Super Bowl shoot the whole second half of the year. They're playing 3 and 4 rookies in their defensive backfield. Well, guess what? All those rookies now are second-year players, and they've taken steps up. And the Chiefs are a top 5 team against the pass this year, whereas the Eagles are a bottom 5 team against the pass. We can sit there and say Eagles have a better roster than the Chiefs. Not in the secondary, they don't.
No. Well, I say no. Statistically speaking, no. I think you still put these guys on the schoolyard. You probably would get people picking Slay.
They're going to play this one at the Arrowhead this week, Mike, not in the schoolyard.
Well, hopefully Arrowhead isn't an ice skating rink like Arizona was last year. But, hey, I mean, talent-wise.
It might be. It's going to rain. Jody told me it's going to rain.
I did the 7-day forecast. Showers all day on Sunday, but this is still, 5-6 days away.
Yeah, well, listen, that Chiefs defense, I think obviously Jones in the middle is the name that kind of stands out, but that defense has been the star of the team this year. And, the Eagles have some of these names with Slay and Bradbury. They bring in Byard. I think it's still kind of a work in a flux here with their defensive secondary. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. They didn't play last week, but, the starting secondary that they're going to end this season with, hopefully, has not played one snap together yet. Not one. I mean, when they get Roby in there with Byard, that'll be the first snap those two guys ever take together. So I think the Eagles defense, the secondary might have the bigger names, but they have less continuity. And I think you're seeing how much that matters right now. The Eagles defense, look, I think one of the things I'm big on is the ceiling of your team. We saw the Eagles defense really play their best game against the best offense in the league. When they played the Miami Dolphins, they said, we can step our game up if we have to or need to. Now, they don't have to or need to every single week, but against Miami, hey, this team can score 60 on us if they want to, or So we're going to show you that we can stop an offense of that caliber if we have to. Now, fans love consistency. They want the same thing every week. I want you to score 45 every week, and I want you to give up 7 every week. Then I'll be happy. The Eagles have showed they can get up to that level, but right now the consistency is on the Chiefs side defensively.
You know, one of the also interesting things about these two particular teams is typically they take care of the football. And this season, they're both in the negative category when it comes to plus minus. Eagles are -2, Chiefs are -4. Nick Sirianni will tell you ad nauseum, win the turnover battle, win the explosive play battle, you're going to win the game. Statistics bear that out. These two teams find ways to win even when they lose one of those two. How much is it just, I always bring up Denny Green. Denny Green told me winning is a habit. These two teams win.
Yeah. Well,
it might be different ways. How much do you buy into that, Mike?
Go to Monday night. You had a team in Buffalo turn the ball over 4 times, and I know they had 12 men on the field, but those are the attention to details that they lose that game because they turned the ball over too many times. They kept Denver in the game. And then the attention to detail. It's why Dallas loses these games. Because in the end, if you're not attention to detail and able to overcome your mistakes, you become Buffalo, 5-5. Philadelphia and Kansas City make mistakes. They're able to overcome them. And that's the sign of why you're a good team. It's not always aesthetically pleasing. It's not always a blowout. It's not always that you make every play. It's that even when you don't make a play, you can overcome it. And that's why Philadelphia is 8-1 and Kansas City 7-2. And the Dallases and the Buffaloes and some of these teams that look better some weeks. There's weeks for Josh Allen. You're like, oh, my God, this guy's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why they're 5-5 because he turned the ball over twice.
You go back to that championship game they blew. Remember, everybody was talking about how are you going to match up with these two quarterbacks? How's anybody else? There's going to be an arms race. And all of a sudden, as you're right, Buffalo's a 500 team.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it. And nobody's going to dispute the talent that Josh Allen has. But Jody knows. I've been calling him reckless for years. You know it, too. He's reckless. He's too reckless.
Brett Favre of our time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he'll throw just 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, but then he has 3 interceptions on the ledger.
Yeah. I'm a Brett Favre guy, but I can't say he's at that level. But yeah, Brett was too reckless, especially as he got older. But man, Brett was good though. I'm not going that far with Josh Allen.
I'll give you another one going way back. Joe Willie Namath used to throw for more yards than anybody else by hundreds, if not thousands. Interception after interception after Joe believed.
Yeah, but that was a different era when you were allowed to play defense. So, everybody points to Joe Namath and Ken Stabler and their statistics. How can they be in a Hall of Fame? Because they were the cornerbacks were allowed to beat up the receivers down the field. You were allowed to hit the receivers over the middle. You couldn't throw the football away, leave the tackle box. None of that existed.
What a great game.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. Hey, look, it was brutal too. So I get the safety aspect of it, but it bothers me when younger fans who don't know the history of the game point to people like Joe Namath and Ken Stabler, the two most notable, and they look at their numbers. They just pick up a piece of paper and say, he's not a Hall of Famer. Yeah, he goddamn was a Hall of Famer. In his era, they dominated. Ken Stabler's win-loss record, by the way, insane. I mean, that guy just won football games. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. It bothers me.
Just an asterisk for the viewers. I am not old enough to relate to any of this. All right.
Yeah, I did see Joe Willie Namath play, actually. All right. Mike Gill, on a game this year earlier against the Washington Commanders, it may have been you, I know I put it out there for a couple different people. I famously set the over-under sacks for the Eagles at 7.5 because I thought they could get upwards of 8 sacks against Sam Howell because the Washington line coming into that game was as sieve-like as there was in the National Football League. And Sam Howell said, "Oh yeah, Jody Mack, I'll get rid of the football in 1.2 seconds. You're not sacking me." And the Eagles didn't get anywhere near the 8 sacks. Here's where I'm setting the sack number for the Eagles this week: 2.5. You going under or over 2.5 sacks for the Eagles against the Chiefs this week?
I'm probably going under, and I think this is going to be interesting because obviously Mahomes, he does hold the ball sometimes, but he also is smart enough, and I think Andy is smart enough to know what they got here and to get the ball out quickly. But does that play into the Eagles' hands? Because these receivers are not guys who are going to catch and run and make big plays. It's now goes back to the defense and the tackling. Yeah, they're going to let you make plays in front of them, but can you make the tackles similar to what they did? I think Tyreek Hill had 11 catches in that game, but he only had 88 yards. He had the one touchdown where he got behind you, but it was inside the red zone or maybe 25 yards. So if the Eagles are going to, that's why they wouldn't have a lot of sacks. It's basically because they're going to get the ball out, but that might play into the Eagles. That might be the game plan. Hey, not a lot of sacks, but make him get out the ball out quick, but we got to tackle. And we want them to get the ball to their wideouts who don't have big play ability in them. So, yeah, I would take the under 2.5 sacks on that for this week.
I take the over for the exact reason Mike just said. Patrick's going to hold on to the ball. He's going to give you some opportunities to get home. My concern is, as you saw in the Super Bowl, he's not Justin Fields. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not even Jalen Hurts when he's healthy. But Patrick is that guy that kills you with that extending the play, gets the big first down. Did the Eagles learn from that? Are they going to spy him with Nicholas Morrow, or it's probably not going to be Zach Cunningham, so it would have to be Nick Morrow? Or are they going to leave the middle of the field open because they're concerned about their pass coverage? That's what I'm worried about, because he's going to pick up big first downs with his legs if you're not paying attention.
Yeah. I think one thing in this game that I would be concerned about if I'm Philadelphia, Spagnuolo is a guy who likes to do a lot of D-back blitzes. He'll bring like the corner, and Andy Reid, Spags, they have to know that Hurts is not a big threat to run in this game, right?
Yeah, but we don't know how healthy is bye week coming
out. But I'm saying that is where I think this game will be very interesting. If they think that's like, all right, let's see if Hurts is a factor in the run game, they go right after to see that early. You see them run a lot of corner blitzes, D-back stuff, safety blitzes. And if he's not willing to use the RPO and run, we've seen this problem with the run game. That'll be interesting to kind of open the book to see what the second half of the season looks like. You talked about the tight end from Carolina, Jody Mack. I was talking to Colin yesterday, and I asked him that question about, do teams hold things in their playbook? Like, do you wait for certain times of the year and say, you know what, we're going to start to expand the playbook a little bit more? And he said, yeah, there's stuff that's not installed or not used in games that you haven't seen yet. So are the Eagles holding stuff back?
Right. It's interesting. We talked to Matt Verderam from SI, and he mentioned something similar to that, but he said typically when you're playing an AFC team, it's like, oh, you're never going to see him again. You run what you want to run. But in this case, these two teams might think they may see each other again, and they may be a little bit more close to the best. I don't know if I buy that, but it is, maybe you want to hold something in the chamber for a big spot if you're going to see a team a second time. Any thoughts on that?
Probably, it's amazing to me how much these teams must overthink things.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
It's like the thought of what you're saying is like, I might see this team 14 weeks from now, and if I run this play one time, are they going to be that meticulous studying my game film that they're going to see a tell or a take? Or is Jim Harbaugh going to have a sign in the crowd that's going to tell me, hey, You remember week 11 on Monday night when the Eagles were in this similar formation? Like, it's amazing that the attention to detail you have to have.
It's funny.
It's not that outrageous.
Yeah.
Let me simplify it for you, Mike. What's the Eagles' goal this year before their final game of the season?
Well, I mean, both these teams want to win the Super Bowl.
To get to the Super Bowl, right? Yeah. What team, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you're Nick Sirianni and the coaching staff, what team do you think most likely you're going to be playing on Super Bowl Sunday?
Right. Well, these two teams think they're going to play again, no doubt.
There you go. Then it's not that all that difficult. Oh my God, how can
I know.
That far down the road? No, that's the matchup that most people would project as of right now.
Yes,
who are the two teams that are going to be in the Super Bowl? Eagles and Chiefs in a rematch.
It's just the thought of that. No, I guess what I'm saying more is that's how attention to detail oriented you have to be a Super Bowl team. And that's why some of these teams are not Super Bowl teams that have a lot of talent, but they're not detail oriented enough. And then they get, they do certain things and it gets caught on tape and you're a really good team. You make the NFC or AFC championship game, but you just weren't attention to detailed enough to get to that. How many times do we see a championship game and all the hoopla and all the hype and you're ready for it and there's a blowout and you're like, man, these are the two best teams in the conference that are left and they lost 35-7. Well, and it's like, one team was just so much more detailed. And then what happens in a game like that is when a game starts to get away, all the preparation, all the want to get to a Super Bowl, I think it just kind of steamrolls and snowballs into a blowout. It doesn't mean that those two teams are 30 points separated, but that's how the result ends up coming out is because one team was had so much more attention to detail than the other. And that's the difference, right now. We talked about it 2 weeks ago between a Philadelphia and a Dallas. Yeah. Philadelphia's attention to detail is Super Bowl level. Dallas is wild card level.
Yeah. And to your point, Jim Schwartz, games have personalities. That's a real thing. It really can unfold on a particular game day. A lot of people are complaining, upset the Sixers finally lost a game in the big in-season tournament, which I don't understand. I have no desire to understand. But anyway, I bring that up to point out that in basketball, all right, people are angst. They have some disappointment. They've been playing so well. You got to get right back out there and play again. Baseball, as you're pointing out, Ole Miss baseball in Major League, you play every day. So you might have a bad loss, but you got to get right back out there. In football, and this is a bye week on top of it, you only play once a week. And Nick Sirianni said something that was obvious earlier this year, and I brought it up, and he said, we're the only major sport that practices more than we play. And I said, you know what? I've been covering this league for a long time. I never thought of it that way. He's completely right. And
barely anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah, still. But he's 100%
could have
right.
made that statement and made it stick more than Nick Sirianni can.
Well, he's still 100% right.
Yeah.
Either they're going to practice on Thursday, Friday, Saturday this week. So that's more than the game, even though they're not practicing. And you go back to training camp. My point is what you brought up, the over-analysis. It's outside the building. It's inside the building.
Well, that's what they do more, John, is they don't practice on the field or hit or whatever, but they're in the classroom. These coaches are probably sitting there watching film ad nauseum because they can't get out there and practice as much, but they're in the building and we're here. So what are we going to do? We're going to watch Kansas City play all week long, all day for 10 hours a day. And 10 hours might be being generously light, by the way. And we're just going to watch every snap and every play and every alignment and everywhere they set up so that if we see that one play that they do it, I'm watching the show Suits. Anybody see Suits on Netflix?
Yeah, I like Suits.
Where the guy remembers every single thing he read or saw. And like they show the visions in his head of like, oh yeah, your cousin. Yeah, I remember him. He was 7th in his class because he remembers the picture on the wall. That's a football coach that pays that attention to detail. I saw that play and this alignment on tape. Crazy.
And the week-to-week nature of the game, and I call it now situation to situation. Like there is no transitive property in the NFL. Miami beats Denver by whatever. They scored
50.
70 points in that game. All of a sudden Denver's beating Buffalo, but there's no week-to-week transitive property in this league. Yet people want to put it there. Now, coaches always talk about the process, and that's what they're talking about, week to week to week to week to week. However, you want to go 1-0 each week. They all say the same thing, like automatrons. Nick Sirianni was fired up after they beat the Dallas Cowboys. He can say what he wants leading up to the game, but he was a little bit more juiced. He's always juiced when they win the game, and they typically win the game. But he was a little bit more juiced for beating Dallas. Well, here, they lost the Super Bowl to a team they thought they were better than. They lost the game they thought they should have won. Is there a little bit more oomph in this game for the Philadelphia Eagles?
It's interesting. Probably. I mean, I think, look, the Eagles, the last 2 years, I think we can all, last year, they dealt with it the whole year. You're a byproduct of the schedule. They haven't beaten anybody. That's because the year before they weren't great. They made the playoffs, but it was kind of like, you just kind of snuck in. And then when you're that team the next year that has that great record, people don't want to believe in you. It takes them to do something for people to finally kind of, all right, you did something to make me a believer. Is beating Miami making people a believer? Doesn't seem like it. Dallas, maybe a little bit more. You beat the Chiefs. I think you've changed the perception to everybody from, the Eagles are good, to this team's really good. So, I think there is a little bit more oomph to that. Maybe not inside the locker room, maybe to the people watching and the pundits and people like us that might give them more credit for a win against Kansas City than we will Miami.
And on the road, remember that. That's
that too.
They got two really good teams on their schedule: Kansas City, San Francisco. San Francisco, you got at home, major advantage Eagles. Kansas City, you got to go on the road and win in their house. That's a tougher test. So I think you're right about it will raise the estimation of the Eagles. But I'll give you one where I think you guys have both underestimated the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll set an over-under for you, Mike Gill. Under-over rushing yards for Patrick Mahomes, 19.5.
Well, he's not much of a, he's not a tuck and run kind of guy. I mean, like a takeoff kind of guy. He will do it every once in a while. And it seems when he does it, it's to get that one big run, that back-breaking first down. And it's for about 20 yards. It's once a game with a few others mixed in.
He did it in the Super Bowl. I mentioned that earlier in the show. That's a big concern. And I think they should be letting Nick Morrow spy him, but I don't know if they're going to do that.
So I would go with the over on the 19.5, basically based off of maybe one run that he gets,
right?
Get that big first down.
To accentuate the point, Jalen Hurts, yards per rush. We all think of Jalen as a rushing quarterback, right? I know less this year because of the knee and the contract and everything else, but he's a running quarterback. Yards per carry, Jalen Hurts, 3.6. Yards per carry, Patrick Mahomes, 6.1.
Yeah.
Almost double what Jalen. And we think of Jalen as a runner. And Mahomes is not a runner.
Yep,
well, guess what? This year, total yards, you want to talk about total yards? Jalen Hurts is third of all the quarterbacks in the league. Patrick Mahomes is fourth. He's got more rushing yards than Josh Allen, who we do think of as a running quarterback. Yeah. Mahomes is not afraid to take off, and the Eagles better be careful, or he could have a back-breaking run just like he did.
Well, Mahomes picks his spots, and you're seeing more of that from Jalen this year. And Jalen's yards per carry obviously are compromised by the tush push. Where he only gets a yard.
Plus, he hasn't been healthy. Yeah. I mean, that's why they're down to where
that's
they are.
That's an interesting point, Jody, is that Mahomes will run and he gets that first down that's backbreaking, but he picks his spots. Is Hurts morphing into that guy where he more picks his spots? Now, that has possibly compromised your run game. And that is something that you have to think about when you're installing a run game that is so predicated on the guy who isn't running being a part of it. So that is something that really needs to possibly be reevaluated. Not so much in the pass game where Hurts would take off and they would run a lot of design. You saw a lot more, design quarterback draw or power, sweep stuff. You don't see that nearly as much anymore, but it has certainly compromised the run game, but it has made him overall a better weapon in the pass game. I mean, he has been,
he's been unbelievable.
Think about the evolution of where he is as a passer from where he was 2 years ago to where he is now. It's almost like you completely replaced the quarterback. It's crazy.
Yeah. He was 2021. He carried it 139 times, 5.6 yards per carry. 2022, 165, 4.6, and he's down to 3.6. I think it's all that tush push. Remember when he was healthy, he wasn't as effective running the ball. I think that's part teams adjusting. They're trying to take it away. I think that's part of it. They're more concerted effort to stop Jalen Hurts in the running game than Patrick Mahomes. When Jalen is healthy, I think that's a part of it. But yeah, Patrick, he gets those one or two back-breaking runs, it seems, every game.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. I don't know. Where do we have Jalen as a running quarterback? I would say Lamar's better. Justin Fields is better. If we want to include Josh Dobbs, now that he's a starter, he's better. Anybody else? I'm missing Josh Allen.
Josh Allen, but
Josh
Allen
Allen
hasn't been that great this year. Instead, he holds it, and forces it into coverage. Just take off, Josh.
Yeah.
Don't be throwing picks, Josh.
Yeah, it's funny how the game, it seemed RG3 kind of started it. He got hurt and kind of vanished. But after that, you had this influx of guys who were probably runners first, passers second, and they are seemingly kind of going away to guys who are just more mobile, picking their spots. They can make play with their legs. Like a Brock Purdy, he's not a runner, but he gets around. I mean, he can move. Guys who can just
have some mobility.
Right.
You gotta have the ability to
extend the play, make things happen. And the big thing, Jody, as you just kind of brought up, is having the intuition to have that back-breaking run in you, that you can take off and get that 15 yards when it's 3rd and 13, and that's a backbreaker right there.
Yeah.
I would put Daniel Jones in that category. But
Daniel. I forgot Daniel
can move.
He can flat out run.
He can
probably run more than he does, but he's not running anywhere because he's done for the season. So the Jaguars.
By the way, Deshaun Watson officially done for the season. The Browns just announced that.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. Had surgery, broken bone on his shoulder. He played through the game with it too.
Jeez.
So.
The Temple kid, PJ Walker, going to take the Browns to the playoffs.
That's interesting because that Browns team was defensively, although it's funny, they played Baltimore last week, two teams with really good defenses, and you had 70 points almost scored in that game. But
personality, Jim Schwartz,
the style of the game,
out of personality.
But if Watson,
that defense has been great. Jim's defense has been.
But if Watson was morphing anywhere near the player he was in Houston, that team would have been interesting.
Yeah, and they would have been dangerous.
The best funny thing about that is the guy who probably should be taking over as quarterback of the Browns is Josh Dobbs, who's been with two teams since, not one, two teams since Arizona into Minnesota, where he's trying to get the Vikings into the playoffs. All right, Mike Gill, give us fill in the blank here. The Philadelphia Eagles will beat the Kansas City Chiefs and get some Super Bowl revenge because they blank. Do what? Or once again, at least in my opinion, that's Mike Gill and John McMullen, the more talented roster loses when these two teams match up because the Philadelphia Eagles didn't blank. You can go optimistic or pessimistic. Whatever you want to do, tell me why.
Earlier in this conversation, I said I take the under on the sacks, 2.5. They will win the game if I'm wrong, and they go over that number, and they get to Mahomes, and they cause some problems, and the defense helps them win this game. If they're going to win this game, they're going to need their defense. We saw it the last time they played. They needed their defense. And it wasn't there for them. They never got the play. They never got that stop. They were up 10 at halftime. They didn't get a stop the entire second half of that game. They win this game if they get that stop, and the defense will be the reason. I think the offense will be fine, in moving the football, maybe not scoring 35 points, because I think Kansas City's defense is people keep talking about, 38-35 in the Super Bowl in this back and forth high scoring game. That hasn't been Kansas City's personality at all this year.
No.
So I look for something more in that 27-24 range. And if Philadelphia gets that stop, they have 27 and Kansas City has 24. But I'll tell you what, the personalities of these teams from where they were in February to where they are now, it's amazing how different they are.
Yeah, that's the NFL. You get 30% turnover usually on the roster. The Eagles have different coordinators. They have 5 different starters on defense. As you mentioned, the Chiefs on offense. Although for all the struggling of the Chiefs, they're 8th in offense. It's not like they're terrible, but they don't have.
They do have something that nobody else seemingly has, as you guys just mentioned. Watson, another quarterback, hurt. I mean, everybody's lost their quarterback, and somehow the Eagles and the Chiefs have not. It's a testament to both offensive lines that they've kept these guys upright.
And by the way, the two teams are built exactly the same, and there's a reason for that, because it all comes from Andy Reid. The Eagles have built the same way since 1999. In the second hour, Mike, we're going to have Brad Spielberger did his top GMs. Howie Roseman's number 1. Thank Andy Reid, because Andy Reid taught Howie Roseman how to build a football team.
Yes, and both these teams build on the lines. Great defensive line. Should be fun on Monday night. By the way, it's supposed to rain Monday night, Jody.
All right. It's
That's
changed already.
Right? Did they change the
It
time
is
of the
Monday
game,
night.
or did I?
Yeah.
It's a Monday night
It's a Monday night game. Yeah.
Right. So
You said it was supposed to rain on Sunday.
Oh,
did I?
no,
No.
he said
I knew
game
the game
day.
was
I don't
Monday.
know. If
I'm
he
pretty
said
sure I
Monday.
said Monday night.
But
Okay.
yesterday he said during the game. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, and look, one of the things, the two teams here, I think, are not doing it in a way that has been overly impressive. But I think that is not because they haven't been impressive. I think, as we just said, they've kind of changed who they are a little bit. And that's why we're not recognizing the teams that we're seeing right now, because the teams that we saw last year were different.
Here's one thing that scares me going into the game, and I know that it's certainly not a perfect comparison, but I think you can do it. You can learn something from it. They don't play against each other. You match up one team's player at one position against the other player at the other position. Well, the offenses don't play the offenses. The defense don't play the defense. I get it, but yeah, Travis Kelce against Jack Stoll. That's kind of an advantage Kansas City when you match up the two tight ends on these teams. And it's unfortunate that Goddard's out. If Goddard were there, I'd say, yeah, advantage Kansas City, but not by much. Yeah, this is
I'm interested to see if Philadelphia uses that to their advantage. And I'm not trying to say Stoll's better than Goddard, but if they try to help jumpstart their run game by having less care if the tight end is a part of the route tree.
I think they may have to do that by necessity. Yeah.
I hope the quarterback is healthy. That'll help the run game. That's what's going to help the run game.
Yeah.
More than a commitment to it. The fact that Jalen can pull the ball back from the guy's belly and take off and go for 10.
Yeah.
That early in the game, that would help the Eagles running game a lot.
Yeah. And by the way, the Chiefs, a team that generally did not run the ball all that much in previous years. Isaiah Pacheco, who's a local kid, is very tough runner, man. He runs. Yeah. He's like a Roger Craig. There's the knees are always up and pumping. He's a tough
7th round pick, baby. 7th round pick.
He was a quarterback at Vineland, and basically they ran the whole offense around him. And then when he got to Rutgers, they made him a running back. So for him to go from quarterback to all of a sudden NFL running back at this level, that's a pretty amazing transformation.
He's pretty big, and he was a key contributor in the Super Bowl. I know that
he was.
They will forever talk about the two uncovered wide receivers, lack of communication in Eagles secondary that scored the touchdowns inside the red zone. But Isaiah Pacheco kept them in the game with the way that he played. in the Super
By
Bowl.
the way, what do you guys have you guys discussed at all the Dobbs stuff and Kayvon Wallace that Gannon lied to him? They say that I would think that that's not uncommon.
I don't. We didn't discuss it. In the case of JG's not in charge of the personnel. I mean, that's one where
Right.
that if there's a red flag there to me, it's that there's not communication between Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon, because there's no reason JG wouldn't want Josh Dobbs playing over Clayton Tune. I mean, there's none. So, and he knows Kayvon from here. I think that's a Monty thing, but those two should be communicating more, obviously.
Yeah.
And by the way, they may have known that Murray was imminently coming back, and by the way, he played pretty well and got a win for him. So
yeah,
that's something
people
they
forget.
may not.
People forget Kyler Murray can play.
Yeah.
I don't know where that.
We were talking about running quarterbacks earlier.
Yeah, there's
He might be as good
Kyler's
as being
back,
elite.
yeah.
At this time 2 years
Kyler's
ago,
on that
at
list.
this time 2 years ago, if you wanted to place a wager on NFL MVP, Kyler Murray was the favorite.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
No, it
He had
quite
a hell
well.
of a year.
All right, Mike Gill, we are waiting with bated breath. We've been waiting all week for the Eagles to play a game, and we had to wait all the way till Monday. We will be waiting for your next T-shirt selection for Wednesday when you jump back on with us next week after the Eagles Chiefs. Thanks for doing it today, big guy.
All right, everybody. See ya.
Check Mike
Thanks,
Gill
Mike.
out on the Sports Bash, 97.3 down the shore. You got a Gill appearance between now and the end of the week on his show?
Oh yeah, I got Wednesday and Thursday.
So if you tune into Mike Gill on the Sports Bash, there's an outside chance you're going to get John McMullen, because he's a staple on Gill's show, and Gill is a staple on ours on Wednesdays here on Birds 365. All right, McMullen and McDonald coming back. We still got plenty to go. Now less than an hour, so you don't want to even think about streaming out with us. Stay right there.